Jace Calder rose before the sun because he liked to hear the first quiet sounds of the world. The windmill clicked slow and steady. The cattle breathed soft in the gray light, and the coffee on the stove gave off a warm smell that meant the day could begin. He lived alone on a small ranch outside Dry Creek. The house was plain, the fences straight, and every tool had a clear place. He did not waste words or time. He believed that small, steady work was a kind of kindness even if no one saw it. On market mornings, he rode into town with his list in his head: nails, salt, a coil of rope if the store had good hemp in stock. He never said much more than he needed to say, but people still watched for him because he was the sort of man who looked at a problem and did not laugh at it or fear it. He just set his hands where they were needed and made the thing better if he could. Dry Creek had a habit that felt harmless until it hurt. When something was heavy or stubborn, when the stove would not draw, or the wheel stuck, or the well rope went stiff with grit, people shook their heads and said, "We can't live without a man." They said it like a sigh and a smile. They did not aim it like a blow, yet it still made someone smaller each time it was spoken. It made a child think she could not try. It made a widow wait longer than she should. It kept good hands from learning new ways. Jace heard the line often, and he heard it again one bright morning inside the mercantile. Nora Lane, who kept the store ledger neat and the shelves straight, was trying to move a crate of sugar off the floor. Lila, who baked pies for the hotel, waited with patience but also with worry because the lunch crowd would want crusts that did not tear. Alma, the new school teacher, stood beside them with a box of chalk and a list for slates and readers. The crate would not shift. Nora tried 2 times, then laughed at herself in a kind, tired way and said that old line, half as a joke and half as a truth that felt heavy. "We can't live without a man." Jace set down his bag of nails and tipped his hat. His voice was even and mild. "May I show you a trick my mother taught me?" He took 2 burlap sacks from a barrel and folded them into thick pads. He slid one pad under the edge of the crate with his boot, then eased a small pry bar beneath the wood lip and rocked the box up 1 inch. He did not lift with his back. He used a quiet lever and his weight. When the edge sat on the pad, he slid the second pad forward and made a simple roll. Then he showed Nora how to lean instead of strain, how to put the handcart close, and how to guide the crate so it moved like a slow wheel instead of a stubborn block. The crate climbed onto the cart as if it had always wanted to rest there. Nora blinked. Lila clapped once without meaning to. Alma smiled in a way that made Jace think of a door opening to a room with light. He did not boast. He did not say the line was wrong. He only nodded and went to pay for his nails. But as he stepped onto the porch with the morning sun on the boards, a thought settled in his chest like a seed. It was not enough to fix one hard thing and leave the old sentence behind for the next hour. A habit like that did not change because a man moved a box. It changed when many hands learned simple ways and kept them, and then taught them to others. On Saturday, he rode back with a wagon that looked strange at first glance. No hay, no sacks of feed, no fence posts. Instead, he had tied down a neat coil of fresh rope. A small jack, a set of wrenches, a hand drill with sharp bits, a level, a tin of grease, a box of screws in different sizes, and a small bundle of tools wrapped in brown paper and labeled in pencil. Extra lantern parts, spare washers, hinge pins, hooks, leather needles. He parked beside the town well and nailed up a little sign he had cut from an old crate board. In his careful hand he wrote, "Learn or share a fix. Noon." At noon the street was quiet. A few children played with marbles. A team rattled past with boards in the back. Jace stood with his hands in his pockets and waited. Then he saw them, Nora, Alma, and Lila, walking toward him with uncertain steps and hopeful eyes. He did not lecture. He set the small jack beneath the hotel supply wagon and showed how to lift the wheel only 1 inch and then set a sturdy block under the axle for safety so nothing could fall. He showed how the level told the truth of a slant and where to wipe old grease. He put the wrench in Alma's hand and said, "Turn until you feel the snug, not the strain." Lila got a dab of axle grease on her cheek and laughed at herself in a way that felt warm, not small. That laugh brought Mr. Patel from the post office with a bent door hinge and 2 boys who wanted to watch and maybe help. Soon there were 9 people instead of 3. Everyone left with one new real thing. Nora left knowing how to roll a heavy load with pads and a pry bar. Alma left with a hand drill and a promise to show the older students how to make a simple shelf for readers. Lila left with a small tin of stove black and a trick to clean a plate without harsh scraping. Mr. Patel left with a hinge that no longer squealed, and a paper with 3 neat steps he had written down himself. The boys left with a knot tied right and a rule in their heads. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Jace took no money. He asked for trades in kind. If you learn a skill, teach a skill next week, he said. If you borrow a tool, bring it back with a story of what you fixed. It felt fair. It felt like planting. By the next Saturday, the sign did not look odd. People were ready at noon. Old Mrs. Vargas brought a churn that would not turn clean. May the seamstress brought a question about oiling the fine parts of her sewing machine. A teenager brought a lariat with a broken splice. Lila brought muffins and said that a kitchen was also a workshop, and she could show anyone how to keep a stove breathing clear. Jace stepped back more often now and let the circle teach itself. He watched hands grow sure. He watched eyes change. Evenings in Dry Creek began to sound new. The old line lost its place. People said, "Let's try it together," or "Show me how you did that," or "I can help." A small pride came into voices, not the sharp pride that breaks things, but the soft pride that holds and mends. The true test arrived in the simple way that tests do. The well rope frayed through at an unlucky hour. The bucket fell with a bang and water slapped the stone. A few voices rose at once. The old sentence lifted like dust in wind ready to sting. Jace felt it, the pull of habit. He did not raise his voice. He did not scold. He pointed to the wagon and said, "We've practiced for this." Nora fetched the spare rope and measured with quick hands. Alma marked the right knot point in chalk. Mr. Patel took the rope end and tied the bucket knot Jace had taught him, pulling each turn flat and fair. Lila steadied the windlass. A farm girl named Ruth, light and strong, set the safety loop around her waist and guided the rope so the bucket rose easy. When water came up and spilled into waiting pails, claps sounded. Not loud, but sure. Faces softened. Shoulders dropped. The town had done a thing together and felt it in their bones. After the well was right, Alma picked up a piece of chalk at the schoolhouse and wrote one plain sentence where anyone could see it. "We can live with each other's help." The words looked gentle on the slate. People read them and nodded like a tune had finally found its true notes. On his ranch, Jace heard his windmill click the wrong way one morning. He knew at once the bearing needed grease. He could have fixed it alone at dusk like always. Instead, he rode into town and told anyone who wished to learn windmill care to come by that afternoon. 10 people showed, half of them women, a few older men, 2 boys, and a girl who could climb taller than any of the boys. Jace locked the wheel so it would not spin, showed calm steps for the climb, and explained how a quiet hum tells you the wind's work is traveling clean down the shaft. Nora climbed first. Her hands did not shake. When she came down with grease on her sleeve and the right sound in her ears, she said something that surprised even her. "I used to say we can't live without a man. I think I meant we can't live without help. Help is not a man or a woman. Help is a gift we learn to give." No one argued. The windmill turned smooth as if to agree. Late spring burned dry too fast. Grass went crisp at the edges. The creek grew shy and pulled back from its banks. When clouds finally gathered, they brought fast rain with trouble folded inside it. A flash flood slid down from the draws and made for the low ground where the schoolhouse sat. Children pointed. Voices rose. That old sentence scraped at throats again. Ready to leap out and take charge of the fear, Jay stepped to the center of the moving worry and used the same steady words. "We've practiced together." Alma rang like a bell, guiding the children uphill in pairs, hand to hand. Nora and May laid boards and made a small ramp for water to choose instead of the school steps. Mr. Patel fetched rope and stakes. Ruth and 2 other girls drove them in with clean strikes. Lila weighted a canvas flap with heavy pans so the brown water turned aside. The flood slowed, then broke into streams the thirsty ground could drink. People did not cheer. They looked at one another with wet eyes and relief like warmth in winter. The days after the flood moved steady and full. The town did not wait for orders or a hero. People met in the mornings, made short lists on scraps of paper, and chose small jobs they could finish before sundown. The school steps were scrubbed clean. The rug at the hotel porch was beaten and set in the sun. The little bridge behind the church was raised by one plank so water could pass under it more easily next time. The work was plain and simple, yet it felt like a new story being written line by line in clear words. Alma began something she called Thursday Hands. Each Thursday after lessons, a few older students stayed at the schoolhouse to learn a skill from someone in town. One week May taught mending that was strong and neat, so a patch looked like respect and not shame. Another week Mr. Patel showed how to keep a small ledger, so a person could see where their pennies went and what was left. Nora taught safe lifting and clever rolling so backs would last into old age. Lila taught how to stretch a meal without making anyone feel poor at the table. Jace came often, but not always. When he came, he showed a knot, a steady way to set a hinge or a quiet method to read weather signs without fear. He never spoke like a master. He spoke as if the knowledge already lived in the hands listening. The county fair was announced for late summer. Dry Creek was used to visiting the fair, eating sweet corn and admiring quilts, but nobody expected prizes. This year felt different. The town planned a joint display called Work We Taught Each Other. It would not belong to one person. It would show a shelf the students built, a mended saddle, a lantern that burned clean because the wick sat right, a quilt stitched by many hands, and a small book of simple how-to notes copied in careful script. Preparing for the fair gave shape to afternoons. People worked in the shade and told light stories about small victories. When the shelf was done, the students carved tiny letters along the back edge where only a curious eye would find them. Dry Creek together. In the middle of these warm days, a letter came for Jace from a supply company in the city. It offered money to lease a strip of his land by the creek for storage. The offer looked good on paper, but that strip held the footpath many children used to reach the school. If the yard went in, the path would close and small feet would have to walk the long road where wagons hurried and dust rose high. Jace could have answered alone. The land was his. Instead, he brought the letter to Thursday hands and set it on the table. "This choice is ours," he said. Voices were careful. Money was thin. A little lease could ease some strain. Alma spoke first in a calm way that sounded like a level finding true. "If we keep the path, we do not only save steps," she said. "We say what kind of place we are, a place that chooses the safe way for small feet." Heads nodded around the table. The students' eyes were bright. They felt seen. Jace wrote back that night by lamplight, thanked the company kindly, and said no. He enclosed a simple drawing the students made for a better plan. A public bench by the creek under the cottonwoods, and a small footbridge to carry them over if high water came again. On the drawing they wrote the line that had become the town's promise: "We can live with each other's help." Fair day arrived with cool air and little clouds like slow sheep. Dry Creek's booth looked modest beside the city booths with bright paint and polished steel, but people kept stopping. They ran fingers along the mended leather. They opened the little book of notes. They pulled the shelf to see if it would wobble, and it did not. A judge with a clean hat and friendly eyes asked who had taught whom. The answer was always the same. "We taught each other," Alma said. "We pass it along," Nora said. "We learn to ask," Lila said. Jace stood back and let the words flow through many mouths. When ribbons were given, first prize went to a big new water pump. But the judges made an extra ribbon that very morning as they walked the grounds. It read, "For community spirit and shared skill." The students cheered, not with loud pride, but with warm pride, the kind that does not sting. Back home, they pinned the ribbon above the school slate where their new sentences lived. That evening, the bench by the creek was finally set in place. It was made of old oak boards sanded smooth. May burned the letters into the back rail with careful heat. "We can live with each other's help." The bench faced the water and the gentle rise of the far hills. People began to stop there at dusk. They did not talk about lack. They talked about plans. Someone wanted to start a small library shelf in the store. Someone had a simple soap recipe to share next Thursday. A boy wanted to learn to shoe a calm horse. A girl wanted to take apart a broken watch and see if she could coax it back to life. A few days later, 3 older ranchers from farther out rode to Jace's gate. They had heard the fair talk and wanted to look this new spirit in the eye. They were not unkind, just cautious. One man joked that he had heard Dry Creek did not need men anymore. He said it with a crooked smile and a thin edge. Jace leaned on the fence rail and answered in the same quiet style that had carried him all season. "We learn to share the work and the knowledge," he said. "That includes men. That includes women. That includes children who can do more than we guessed. Strength grows when we share it." The men looked toward town. They heard distant laughter and the steady hum of a windmill. The edge in their smiles softened. One said his windmill clicked wrong and asked if he could bring his niece on Thursday to learn grease and safety. "You'll both be welcome," Jace said, and meant it. Soon the town began to keep a small box at the store labeled "Questions We Have Not Solved Yet." Anyone could slip in a folded note. Once a week, people gathered at the bench to pull a few notes and try ideas. A note might read, "How do I keep flour dry in the damp week?" Or "How can I tighten a chair leg that wobbles when a guest sits?" Or "How can I share my extra milk without wasting?" Each question met a handful of honest tries. They failed in small ways and learned in small ways. A new habit grew. Nobody felt ashamed to ask. Asking was a kind of gift because it opened a path for others to help. Autumn edged in. The light came late and left early. The cottonwoods turned the color of warm butter and let go leaf by leaf. Alma hung lanterns on the school porch for the first dark Thursday hands, so the students could see their work without strain. Lila brought a pot of simple soup that tasted like comfort and did not cost much. Nora organized a swap shelf where people could leave what they had extra and take what they lacked, with no tally and no speech. Mr. Patel showed the older students how to wrap glass jars in old cloth so they would not break when a wagon hit a rut. Ruth, the farm girl who had guided the well rope, taught younger kids to climb safely and fix a loose shutter on a windy day. Jace watched the circle widen. He felt like a man standing near a strong fire that many hands tended. No one claims it, yet it warms everyone. One cold afternoon, a storm rolled over the hills faster than anyone liked. The sky went a hard gray. A sharp wind blew. A plank in the school roof lifted and slapped. Old habit might have told people to run for the one man who knew roofs. But the new habit moved first. Alma rang the brass handbell. 2 older students fetched the ladder. Nora and Ruth climbed with steady feet while Jace held the base and called clear, simple notes. Slow, 3 breaths, now step. They set sandbags where the plank wanted to lift. May and Mr. Patel stayed below and cut cloth strips to seal the drip until a full repair could be made in clear weather. The fix held. The children inside kept reading, calm under the hum of rain. When the storm passed, the town did what it always did now. They wrote a new sentence on the slate. We can live by acting early and acting together. As harvest ended, the students brought a new idea. They wanted to write down the whole year of changes so they would not forget where they started. They called it the town's plain book. Each person wrote 1 page. The rules were simple. No fancy words, no blame, 1 honest story each. A page might tell of learning a bowline knot, or the day a shy boy taught his father the soft way to set a hinge, or the morning a widow realized her hands could lift more than grief. Jace wrote last. His page was the shortest. It read, "We changed a sentence and it changed us." He dated it and shut the book with a smile that touched his eyes. Snow came early in a thin white sheet. The bench by the creek wore a soft cap. People walked slower, but Thursday hands did not stop. The meeting moved indoors to the schoolhouse where the stove glowed and boots steamed dry. During one of those evenings, a stranger passed through town. He was tired from travel and sharp with old ways. At the store, he heard a woman show another woman how to fix a loose latch and laughed in a careless tone. "You folks think you can live without men now?" he said.